It's a beautiful Sunday morning as I walk down Cedar Avenue. Good morning, James! Greg Thompson greets me from across the street, sipping from a mug of coffee as he picks up the newspaper from his driveway. He wears a comfortable yet classy ensemble, typical of a man who seems to be perpetually dressed for a weekend at Macy's. Hey, Greg, ready for that barbecue next Sunday? I ask him, recalling the invitation he'd extended to us at some point in the last few weeks. Of course! Emma's bringing her potato salad, right? Absolutely, I assure him, even though Emma hasn't mentioned anything about it. I'll have to remind her later. The Parkers' dog barked at me as I walked by, and I saw Allison at her front doorway, just about to go out for a run. Perfect morning, I reply, feeling like the whole thing is something out of a real estate ad, which is exactly what Emma and I wanted when we decided to move here. I continue my walk around the block, counting the houses as I go. I pass the tree where my daughter fell off her bike the summer before, and the house with the barking dog that always makes me jump. Everything is just as it should be. When I arrive back at our house, I pause for a moment to admire the flowers my wife planted in the front yard. The sun is shining, and the world is a beautiful place. I step inside, feeling grateful for my life and my family. In the kitchen, I find my wife's phone buzzing with notifications. I try to ignore it, but a message pops up on the screen, catching my attention. Buzz. Mark. Miss you already. I hesitate for a moment, unsure if I should look at the message, but curiosity gets the better of me, and I glance at the screen. Buzz. Mark. Last night was... I know I shouldn't, but I can't help myself. I unlock my wife's phone. She uses the same swipe pattern as I do, and she never changed it. Mark. Miss you already. Mark. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to do it again. Emma. Soon. We have to be careful. Is he getting suspicious? Mark. No, he's clueless. I love you. My heart sinks as I read the messages. I can't believe what I'm seeing. I scroll up, reading more of the conversation. It's clear that Mark and my wife have been having an affair for months. The sound of the shower turning off upstairs snaps me back to reality. I quickly put my wife's phone back where I found it and sit down on the couch, trying to process what I've just discovered. Oh, you're home! I hear Emma coming down the stairs. How was your walk? I cleared my throat and tried to speak normally. It was good. I ran into Greg. He said something about having a barbecue next weekend. She stepped into the doorway, wearing her robe. Oh, I forgot to mention that. I should make the potato salad. The way she acted like nothing had happened, like she hadn't been cheating on me and making fun of me behind my back, made me feel sick. Greg was expecting it, I finally get out, as she drifts through the space like she always does. How many other spaces has she drifted through without me? Her phone buzzed again in the kitchen. She looked that way, then back at me. I should get that. Could be my mom confirming lunch next week. Yeah, I reply, knowing I'm lying. Probably a good idea. She didn't notice the slight irritation in my voice, or maybe she did but pretended not to. I watched her go back to the kitchen, and moments later I heard her tapping away on her phone. When I looked out the window, I saw the neighbor's lawn was still being watered, and everything else seemed exactly the same as when I had been out for my walk. But instead of making me feel reassured, it just made me feel like I was living in a dream, like this was all an elaborate ruse to keep me from seeing the ugly truth behind the facade. Emma came back in the room with her phone. Mom wants to do lunch on Wednesday instead of Thursday. That actually works out better for me anyway. I wondered if she meant her real schedule or the fake one. I wanted to ask her that, but decided it was best to hold off for now. I needed to think about what all of this meant and what I should do about it. Whatever works best, I say, and I realize how many times I've said that to her, how many times I've made things easier for her, too trusting for my own good. She sits down on the couch and starts scrolling through her phone. I look at the family pictures on the wall and wonder if there is more to this. I don't sleep very well that night. I lie awake next to Emma and think about all the possibilities. I look at the clock every now and then and see the hours come and go. It's not until the early hours of the morning that I fall asleep. And when I wake up again, the sun has risen, and Emma has already left for work. The next day, I wake up in bed and see Emma has already gotten up. I hear her getting ready downstairs. I have that breakfast meeting with the client, she says from the foot of the stairs, and then yoga with Allison. We'll probably eat out after class, so don't worry about dinner. Okay, I say. Whatever you want. I waited until I heard the door close and her car pull out of the driveway. Looking out the window, I saw her silver BMW driving down the street a few seconds later. Once she was out of sight, I went over to the bedside table and pulled out a brand new, plain black notebook. I opened it up to the first page and wrote down what she had just said. Monday, 7:15 a.m., client breakfast meeting, yoga with Allison. Check with Allison? I went downstairs and made myself a coffee. The fresh brewed aroma of it reminded me of my wife, and I felt a pang of betrayal as I thought of her lies. But I had to remind myself, this was all for a good reason. If she was cheating on me, I needed to know. My phone buzzed on the counter, and I picked it up, seeing I had a text from Greg. Hey, got those golf clubs you were asking about. Stop by whenever. I hadn't asked about golf clubs. This was Greg's code to let me know we were in private and he could talk. I went over to his place a little while later, and soon we were sitting in his garage, sipping scotch and talking about my wife. How long have you known? I asked her, skipping the bullshit. He took a sip of his drink before answering. I suspected for a while, but I knew for sure last month at the Richardsons' anniversary party. I caught them looking at each other when they thought no one was watching. And you didn't think to tell me? Would you have believed me? He places his glass on his desk. Some things people need to learn on their own. I pulled out my notebook and opened it. I need to know everything you can tell me. Dates, times, anything strange you noticed. Greg looked at me skeptically. What are you going to do? Take notes, then make a decision. He nodded. Start with the book club meetings. Emma and Allison are the only two who actually go to them. The other members stopped coming months ago. I wrote that down. Anything else? The fundraiser back in March. Emma told us she was ducking out early because of a headache, remember? She left with Mark, I say, recalling the night from a new angle. They were both gone by the time we realized. I took another sip of my scotch, trying to let it dull the pain of every new piece of information he gave me. There were a lot of things I had missed, but Greg pointed them all out. When I got home, I began to do my own research, looking at Emma's calendar and comparing it to things I knew about her life. There were patterns of suspicious behavior, I realized. Times when she said she was going to be at work late, or when yoga classes went on longer than they should have, or when book club meetings didn't actually discuss any books. My phone rang. It was Emma. Hey babe, I might be home a bit late tonight. The Martinez account is giving me some trouble. Of course, I reply, adding it to my list of justifications. Whatever you need. You're always so supportive, she says, and I can hear her smiling. That's why I love you. The line went dead, and I put the phone back down on the hook. I wondered how many other times she had made these phone calls, and to how many other people. A second later, the doorbell rang, and I saw someone standing on the front porch. It was Allison. She was dressed for yoga class. I thought Emma was going to yoga class with her right now. I opened the door, trying to look like everything was normal. James, is Emma here? She missed her class and she's not picking up. Meeting, I reply, studying her expression. The Martinez account. She looked like she recognized something, then quickly said, Oh, right, she did mention that. I guess I forgot. Yeah, easy to lose track, I say. Like that book club you two are in, right? What are you reading these days? She hesitated for a moment before replying. Oh, just some psychological thriller. I can't remember the name. After she left, I wrote down the time and details of her visit. I went online and began searching for private investigators. I didn't contact them right away, but I wanted to know what my options were. A few minutes later, Greg sent me another message. Mark's car just pulled into the parking lot of the Grand Hotel. Just thought you'd want to know. I checked my wife's location on Find My Friends, but it was switched off. That didn't surprise me. She was out meeting with the Martinez family, after all, and they probably didn't want to meet at their house. I clicked on one of the private investigators and began to fill out the contact form. In the box marked Reason for Contact, I wrote Surveillance. The sun began to set outside and the house grew dim, casting long shadows on the walls. I looked at the pictures of my wife and considered all of the things I hadn't noticed about her. The hidden sides of her I had been blind to, the secretive nature of her smile. My phone buzzed with another text message from her. Running later than expected. Don't wait up. Whatever works, I type back. Then I fill out the investigator's form. Some things need to be seen by a professional. I'm ready to know the truth. The next 2 weeks are a struggle. I go through the motions of a happy marriage, making coffee for two, texting back and forth about what to make for dinner, and trying not to notice the increasing number of late meetings and client emergencies. The investigator's retainer fee ticks away day by day. until finally I receive an email from him. Findings ready for review, available to meet at your earliest convenience. Sarah Chen's office is dimly lit, and the ambiance is reminiscent of a confessional. Her computer screen casts a cool, bluish light on her face as she goes through the evidence on her computer. "Mr. Mitchell," she says, in that particular tone they use, "I've assembled your file here. Would you like to begin with the photographs from the surveillance, or the text messages?" "Photos?" I answer. I don't know why. It just seems more definitive. She turns her monitor to me, showing the first picture. It's of Emma leaving the Grand Hotel with Mark. His hand is on her lower back. The time reads 2:47 p.m. "This is from 3 days ago," Sarah says, scrolling through other images. "They were with each other for about 2 hours. The next series of pictures shows them at some restaurant I don't recognize, holding hands across a candlelit table. Emma is wearing the dress I bought her for our anniversary. "Here's what we found when we started tracking her more closely," Sarah goes on, opening another folder. "Turns out, Mr. Anderson wasn't the only person she was seeing." The picture that popped up made me sick to my stomach. It was Greg Thompson in his car, kissing Emma, outside a cheap hotel in a nearby town. "When?" I hear myself ask. "Last Thursday. She had a dentist appointment then." I remember bringing her soup that night, thinking she had a sore mouth from the root canal. "And," Sarah adds, her voice softening just a touch, "Miss Parker, too. The next picture was of Allison and Emma hugging outside of a spa downtown, both of them dressed in yoga clothes, not from the gym, as I had been led to believe." "Jesus," I mutter, rubbing my eyes. "All of them." "The text logs are illuminating," Sarah adds, pushing a dense folder over to me. "They've been planning things for months. There's a group chat." I opened the folder and began to read. Emma: "He believed the book club excuse again. So gullible." Allison: "That's why he's the best." Greg: "Tomorrow at my place? My wife is visiting her mother." Mark: "Don't use it all up before Friday." There are many more, just like it. Sarah's voice is low. "Want me to give you the highlights?" I shook my head and closed the file. "No, I think I got the picture. Several of them, actually. If you're going to sue, everything is documented according to state law. Timestamps, locations, verification of identities. They didn't notice? Your wife and her guests were not very discreet. They got off on it, I think." I laughed bitterly. The perfect neighborhood, that's what we called it. Everyone was so nice and friendly when we moved in. "Mr. Mitchell," Sarah says, sounding worried, "what are you going to do with all this?" I looked at her, at the wall full of diplomas and degrees, proving she was an expert at uncovering people's secrets. "You've been doing this a while?" I ask. "What do people usually do next?" Most of them either hire a divorce lawyer or they tell their partner what they learned. Some people choose to ignore it, and a few... She stops, trying to find the right word. A few choose to get creative. Creative? I can't discuss other clients, but I will say a sudden break can be a lot more painful than a slow one. I think about the neighborhood barbecue this weekend, about Greg and Allison and Mark and Emma's potato salad. What if I wanted to share it with a broader audience? She doesn't seem to react to this, but I think I see a glimmer of respect in her eyes. "You can do whatever you want with the files. And the video." "Video?" She types something on her keyboard, and a moment later, another feed is displayed on the screen. It looks like the pool house at night. "It was already there," she says. "Security system. We just tapped into it. I see them all." "What do you think the cost would be to project something like this onto, say, the side of a house?" "That depends on the equipment," Sarah said. "And the timing," I thought. "This Saturday night," I say, "just after the sun sets, once everyone's had a couple of drinks." She grabbed a different folder, this one filled with documents related to the equipment we used on our shoots. "And we'll need to talk about specs," she adds, giving me a sly look. "Maybe a couple of speakers here and there." I leaned forward. "What do I need to do?" she explained. It seemed like a good idea, and it didn't feel like I had much of a choice. If I wanted to get to the bottom of what was going on with my wife and my neighbors, I would have to trust Sarah and her team. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. 3 days later, everything was ready for our little gathering. I had pretended to be on board with my wife's plan, but in reality, I was setting up a plan of my own. Sarah had sent a few of her people over to help me. They installed some things in our house and in a couple of the neighbors' houses as well. By Friday morning, everything was in place. After Emma left for work, I went into my home office and spread out the documents Sarah Chen had given me on my desk. It was 9:17 a.m. According to the private detective's schedule, this was around the time Emma met Mark at the Grand Hotel. A few minutes later, I opened my laptop and clicked on the folder that Sarah had sent me. The first picture was from yesterday. Emma and Mark were inside an elevator, and he had his hand on her ass. Perfect, I say, saving the picture in a new folder called HR Package. I got a text from Greg that just said, "Are you still good for Saturday?" "On track," I answer, conveniently omitting the part about having a video of him and Emma that would ruin his entire reputation. I think I'm more mad at him than Emma. I start typing up the first email to send to Emma's HR department. "Hi, I wanted to inform you about a potential breach of ethics by 2 of your employees." I write a short email with a selection of photos and screenshots attached to it. I make sure that every face is visible and that they are clearly identifiable as employees at the company. It isn't hard since they didn't cover their tracks at all. My phone rings. It's Emma. "Hey babe, my presentation's gonna keep me late. You don't have to wait up for me tonight, all right?" "Whatever you need," I respond, dropping another incriminating photo into the HR folder. "Hope you nail your presentation." "Thanks, love you," she says. I hung up, thinking about how often she had called me from Mark's bed. Next up was his company. They had a strict policy about employees dating each other, especially if they shared clients, which they did. And according to the records Sarah had sent to me, there were at least 3 instances where Emma and Mark had used a client meeting as an excuse to meet up. I was interrupted by the doorbell. I looked through my office window and saw that it was Allison. She was still wearing her yoga clothes. I closed the laptop and went downstairs. "Hey James, is Emma around? She missed class again." "She's got her big presentation today," I reply, studying her expression for any signs of deception. "Running late," she said. "Oh, right. She told me about that," Allison replies, looking around awkwardly. "Can you remind her to call me when she gets a chance?" "Sure thing," I say, mentally preparing to send her husband a few pics of her and Emma together. I sit back down at my computer and begin writing emails. One for Greg's wife, one for the president of the neighborhood association, one for each of their spouses and partners. Carefully, I explain what I've been told, attaching screenshots of the videos and pictures and text messages for evidence. All ready to go, I hover over the send button of the first email, and then I hesitate. This was going to ruin a lot of lives. People's careers would be destroyed. Kids would grow up in broken homes. This entire neighborhood might fall apart. And then I got another text. It was from Greg. "Emma just left with Mark to go to a hotel. Can't wait for the show on Saturday." The prospect of him watching me, knowing what I was going through, and getting off on it was the final straw. I hit send on the first email. Then the second, the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. Finally, I composed one for Emma's parents. They needed to know what kind of person their daughter was, and how she'd been treating the man they had taken in as family. As I was finishing up, the sun was rising. The glow of the dawn cast shadows around the house, and I looked at the pictures of Emma and I from our wedding and from our honeymoon. There was something about her smile that made me sick now, knowing the truth. My phone buzzed with a text message from Emma. "Grabbing lunch with a friend. Don't wait for me." I opened the app to see where she actually was and saw her entering a hotel across town, a different one from the Grand this time. "Enjoy lunch," I typed back, adding a heart emoji of my own while clicking send on the email to her parents. The last document is the technical setup for the projection on Saturday. I look through it and imagine what will happen when the truth gets out. Sarah Chen. Test successful. We're ready for Saturday. I close my laptop. Outside the window, I see Greg watering his lawn, smiling and waving to the neighbors walking past. Everyone is playing their part. I can't wait for Saturday. Friday afternoon was spent going through all the files, and I didn't go to bed until after dark. I couldn't sleep, though. Now, it's Saturday morning, and I'm sitting in my car, parked outside Emma's office. The next morning, I sat in my car outside of Emma's office, watching as people came and went through the front doors. I was waiting for them to arrive, wondering if they would have any clue what was about to happen. At 9:15 a.m., Emma arrived in her car. She got out and walked inside, looking normal. She had no idea. I got a message from Sarah Chen at that moment, and she told me HR had received everything and the meeting was set up for 10 a.m. I put my phone down and saw that Mark was pulling into the parking lot. He got out of his car and walked inside as well, waving at a few of his co-workers on the way in. He seemed happy and completely oblivious. As I watched the front doors of the office building, I wondered how long it would take before they would be on the phone with each other, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. "It's starting," comes a voice we recognize. Jennifer from HR, who we've been coordinating with to finalize the evidence. They look like they're shitting themselves. I pictured them sitting around a table on the 30th floor, showing him the evidence, the looks of disapproval on their faces. "All right, what happened?" I ask, as I spot another security guard rushing in through the entrance. We showed Mark the hotel video, and he practically shit his pants. Emma kept denying it until we pulled up the expense reports. A bitter smile crossed my face. "The receipts for the Martinez account? Client meetings, right? So we checked the dates against your records. 6 hotels charged to the business. More people entered from the revolving doors. What about the other people?" 3 department heads were CC'd on the evidence. "The ethics committee is convening this afternoon." She lowers her voice a bit. "They're done, James. There's no recovering from this." I saw some movement out of the corner of my eye and turned to see Mark coming outside. He was pulling at his tie, trying desperately to loosen it as he walked to his car. He was on the phone with someone, talking animatedly. "Okay, it's happening," I say to Jennifer. Mark's out of the building. Emma's being brought down by security. HR procedure for abrupt firing. I sat up straighter, not wanting to miss this. The revolving doors spun, and my wife came in with 2 security guards on either side of her, her purse clutched tightly in her hand and a stunned look on her face. "Who else knows?" I ask Jennifer, while Emma struggles to find her car keys. "Everyone in the building. Somebody posted the pics in the break room chat." Emma's phone began to ring. Probably Mark, trying to get their stories straight. She ignored it. "What about the other businesses? Greg's firm? Allison's practice?" The emails were sent to them at the same time. They should be blowing up right about now. Emma's phone started to ring again at that very moment. She answered it this time, and I heard her panicked voice. "What do you mean they know? How would they figure that out? How could they— No, no, no." She was standing next to her car, nervously running her fingers through her hair. I checked my phone. One message from Greg's wife. "I have the proof I need. Thank you. I'm meeting my lawyer later today." Another message from Allison's husband. "This will be enough. I'm filing for divorce today." Emma sat down in her car and looked at her phone. "The ethics committee asked if you want to make a statement." "Do you?" Jennifer asks, snapping me back to the present. "No, I think everything they need is in there. They'll probably arrest him for the expense fraud. Criminal charges." I heard Emma's car start and squeal out of the parking lot. She was probably on her way to Mark's place, or Greg's, or somewhere else. "Let me know what's happening," I say to Jennifer, hanging up. My normal phone rings. It's Emma. I let it go to voicemail. I don't need to hear her excuses. There is no excuse for this. A text message from Sarah Chen. "Step 1 complete. Are we on for Saturday?" I start my car and look up. The executives are still standing there, talking to each other. They have no idea what's coming. "Yup, Sarah," I say. "Always save the best for last." As I drive away, I can see Mark pacing by his car, talking on his phone. This is going to ruin him, but he doesn't know that yet. I receive notifications from my phone from various sources, telling me that my plan is working. This place won't make it through the week, but then again, it was never intended to last that long. I look forward to Saturday. I'll deal with that when it's time. Some things need to burn down before they can rise again. The sun is setting, and I'm driving home. I left the city behind me a while ago, and I'm on my way to the suburbs. It's a 20-minute drive, long enough for me to cool off. I've done what I came here to do, and it seems like the consequences are already spreading like wildfire. The drive back home feels like a dream or a nightmare. And not just that, it feels like someone else is driving my car. I see the street where I live, but now I know that the same thing is happening in every house. The same confusion, the same fear. Emma's car is in our driveway when I get home. She's parked in a hurry, I can tell. The door is wide open and her keys are on the ground. She always leaves a mess wherever she goes, even in a situation such as this. I enter the house and see her pacing back and forth in the living room. She's still wearing her suit, but her hair is all messy. It looks like she's been pulling it in frustration. Her phone is on the table. I guess she got tired of all the notifications. She turns around when she hears me entering. "What did you do?" she asks, her voice breaking. I close the door behind me. "I just told some people the truth." "Truth? You ruined my life, my career, my credibility." She rubs her fingers into her scalp. "Your fake life," I reply, walking towards the fireplace. Our wedding photo still sits on the mantel above. Seems like a lifetime ago. "Wait, how did you... the pictures, the texts..." She pauses. "You hired a PI?" "That's right," I say, looking her dead in the eyes. "And he was very detailed in his reporting." She sat down on the couch. "How long have you known? How much did you see?" "Enough to prove without a reasonable doubt. The receipts from your Martinez account were especially enlightening. James, I can explain the hotel expenditures, the fake client dinners, or should we start with the group chat?" I ask her, my tone controlled as I see her wince at every new detail. My phone buzzes on the coffee table in front of me. "They're probably worried about why you haven't gotten back to them," I say. "Mark was pretty upset when he left the office." "You were there?" Her eyes widen. "You saw..." "I saw the whole thing explode, yes. Just like I've been watching you and Mark and Greg and Allison for months now." She stops at Greg's name. "Greg? What does he have to do with anything?" I finish for her. The hotel security footage from last Thursday was very revealing, but not quite as revealing as the pool house video. She looks at me in horror. "Video? 1080p. The homeowners association doesn't play, huh?" Her phone buzzed again, and then again. "Those would be the lawyers," I say. "Husband's lawyers, the company lawyers. Fraud charges move very fast." "Fraud?" she asks. "What are you talking about?" "Expense reports, Emma. Fake dinners with clients. Hotel rooms that were never booked for any real work. Well, not work, anyway." She got to her feet, still looking dizzy. "This isn't happening. This can't be happening. You've been doing this for months. You just didn't see people watching. I'm going to lose everything," she mutters. To herself more than to me. "You already did." Her phone went off a second later. It was Mark. "You should pick that up," I say. "He's probably wondering why you aren't at his house yet. Although his wife might be there now, cleaning out his stuff." "His wife knows?" "Everyone knows, Emma. That was sort of the idea." She looked defeated. Her panic was gone now, and she sat down heavily on the couch. "What do you want?" "Nothing." I spin around and head towards the stairs. "Oh, and I filed for divorce yesterday. I'm sure you'll hear from my lawyer. That is, if you can find a lawyer willing to represent you after today." "James, wait. The guest room is ready for you," I continue. "You can stay the night there until you figure out what you're doing next. I don't think you can live in Greg's guest room anymore. His wife changed the locks this afternoon." Her phone buzzed again. I could see people walking past our house, trying to look inconspicuous as they took pictures, trying to get a look inside. "Oh, and Emma?" I pause on the stairs. "Clear your schedule for Saturday. You're not going to want to miss this year's block party." I left her there, sitting on the floor, and went up to our bedroom. Her phone kept buzzing, making that annoying noise with new text messages and phone calls coming in. I looked out the window and thought about Saturday. It was still a few days away, but I could wait. I could wait for her to get what she deserved. I put my hand in my pocket and felt the remote control that would activate all of Sarah's recording equipment. Later, I fell asleep, but I only got a couple of hours of sleep that night. I could hear her walking around in the guest room downstairs. At some point during the night, my anger turned into something else. I got up, put on my best suit, and drove downtown. I arrived at the law firm Blackwood & Associates just after 9 a.m. with the folder containing all the evidence I had gathered. The next day I go to Marcus Blackwood's office and we spend the entire morning going through Emma's finances. "Your wife has been funneling money for months," Marcus says, adjusting his silver-rimmed glasses. He showed me a highlighted section of the document and pointed to a series of transactions. "So, these wellness services charges, they line up exactly with the dates from your PI's report on the hotel stays." I looked at it and said, "She used the family account to pay for the affairs?" "Not just yours," Marcus says, pulling out another document. "She has been siphoning money into a private account linked to not one, not two, but 3 different credit cards. One for her, one for Mark Anderson, and one for Gregory Thompson's wife." I gasped. "You mean like identity theft?" "That, and a bunch of other stuff. The credit card company is wondering why Mrs. Thompson isn't checking into her hotel rooms." My phone buzzed in my pocket with another text from Emma, asking me to call her, and I ignored it. "What now?" I ask. Marcus is arranging the evidence into neat stacks. We file today. The fraud evidence is strong, but the misuse of corporate expenses, that is the real killer. He smiles slightly. Your wife won't even see it coming. The intercom on his desk buzzes, and his secretary's voice comes through. Mr. Blackwood, Mrs. Mitchell's lawyer is on line 2. Again. Marcus looked at me with one eyebrow raised. That's the 3rd time they've called today. Should we make them wait a little longer? Let them deal with it, I say, grabbing the next bank statement. What's the recurring payment to Literary Pursuits? Ah, yes, that one's fun. The fake book club was a front to withdraw cash, and that cash was spent on hotel bar tabs, dinners, you name it. Very literary pursuits. There's a knock at the door, and one of Marcus's assistants comes in, holding a fresh stack of papers. Preliminary findings from the forensic accountant, she says, setting them down. Check out page 12. I turned to the page she mentioned and looked at the transfers, seeing the money was going to an offshore account. She's been transferring money overseas? I ask, feeling strangely detached. Preparing her exit, I assume, Marcus replies, looking at the document. Not very smartly, though. We can cut off those funds before she gets to them. Sarah took a seat opposite me. And she did it all from her work email address. Corporate sent me the emails this morning. My phone buzzed again. It was Greg this time. I have until Saturday. How fast can you make it happen? I ask. Marcus checked his calendar. I can have it filed by the end of the day. With the evidence of fraud, we can request an emergency hearing to freeze the assets. Do it, I say, signing the paperwork he hands me, and send copies of all of it to the DA's office. Done, Sarah says, working on her tablet. They're mostly interested in the identity theft charges. Turns out, Mrs. Thompson is very pissed off about her credit rating. It was a text from Allison's husband's lawyer telling me he had received the proof that showed she had paid for half the hotel room. Last but not least, Marcus continues, reaching for the final folder in his stack, we found this in Emma's personal email. Apparently she's been in touch with some divorce lawyers of her own, asking how she can get the most out of you. I think of her careful smiles, her reassurances, all while she planned her own suicide. Not the best at being sneaky, huh? Sarah asks as she prepares the case for the court. No, I reply, thinking back to all the clues she left. She never did give me enough credit. He stood up. The petition will be filed within the hour. Do you want to be here when she's served? I looked at my watch. No, I think I'll let her get that news at home. It'll give us something to talk about at the barbecue on Saturday. The infamous block party, Marcus replies, giving me a look. This one's going to be fun. My phone buzzed with another message a moment later, confirming everything was set for Saturday's presentation. More than they realize, I say, collecting my copies of the evidence. Much more than they realize. When I left Marcus's office, I had all the evidence I needed to confront Emma. I just needed to wait until Saturday. I couldn't wait to see the look on her face when I revealed everything I had found out about her. Little did I know, she would be served with the papers as soon as I came home. When I came back from Marcus's office later that day, Emma was sitting in our living room. I noticed the unopened manila envelope on the coffee table. James, please, I think we should discuss this. There's a note of pleading in her voice, but it's also strategic. I put my briefcase down at my feet. It's all in the paperwork. Documents don't define us, what we were, what we could be. She stands, inching closer. I stood up and walked around to the other side of the chair, keeping my distance from her. I didn't want to be within arm's reach of her if she got angry. I knew I was poking the bear, but I couldn't stop myself. Just like the secret bank accounts explain your goals, or the credit card in Mrs. Thompson's name explains your dedication? She stopped in her tracks. How do you... I had a very diligent forensic accountant, I pat the briefcase, and a very diligent corporate IT. I could see Allison slowing down her power walk outside, pulling out her phone. Word would spread quickly, of course. It wasn't what you think, Emma says, her hands shaking as she adjusts the bottom of her skirt. I was just trying to what? Get a head start? Prepare for when things went to hell? She sat back down on the couch. You don't get it. I know identity theft. I know fraud. I know that while you were fucking half the neighborhood, you were also robbing them. She looked up at me, her eyes full of anger. That's not fair. No? Maybe we should get Mrs. Thompson on the phone and see what she thinks about what's fair. The package she was holding fell to the floor as she shifted her position, but neither of us bothered to pick it up. I did things wrong, she says. Things I shouldn't have, but we can make this right. I let out a cynical laugh. Fix what? The legal charges, the corporate scandal, or just your image? I glance out the window. I see Greg pacing back and forth in his driveway, talking on the phone. We could make a fresh start, Emma suggests, standing back up. Go somewhere far away, away from all this. And pay for it with what, credit cards? She winced. I can't blame you for saying that. You did more than what you were paid for. The DA thinks so too. She looks pale. The district attorney? Apparently, they're very interested in identity theft that crosses state lines. She came toward me, reaching her hands out. Please, James, I'll do whatever you want. Like you did with Mark, or Greg, or Allison? Each one hits her like a punch to the stomach, and she steps back, nearly tripping over the coffee table. I loved you, she says, and for once I think she might actually mean it. I still love you. No, you loved that I made everything easy. You loved that I was trusting. A few more neighbors walk by outside, taking their dogs on unnecessary walks. What do I do? She says, her voice breaking. How do I make this right? I picked up the envelope and handed it to her. You can read these papers, sign them, and then figure out how you're going to tell your parents. My parents? Her expression shifts to a fresh shade of panic. They're very interested in the hotel receipts you put on their credit card. She took the envelope with her hand, trembling. Since when did you become so cruel? Since when did you become so reckless? With our marriage, with other people's money, with everyone's trust. Her phone began to buzz again. Maybe it was Mark or Greg, I thought. Can you come to the barbecue on Saturday? She says, using the envelope as cover. Show everyone we're getting along? I remembered the projector equipment in Greg's garage and Sarah Chen's video montage. Yeah, I'm coming, I say. I wouldn't miss it. She starts to walk away, but pauses. I did love you, James, in my own way. You were in a lot of people's beds. She flinches but doesn't say anything, and I open the door for her to leave. She exits, and I watch her through the window as she walks to her car. Some of the neighbors are peeking out from their blinds, watching her as well. I get a text from Sarah Chen. We're doing the final test of the equipment tomorrow. Everything is on track for Saturday. I text back, Great! On the coffee table, I see the courier envelope with the divorce papers inside. I imagine her reading them after someone serves them to her. I wonder what she'll think, but I don't really care. I just want her out of my life. I hear her car start and drive away. I'm glad she's gone. Now I can focus on my plan. Only a few days left until Saturday. The next 3 days are a blur. I don't think about Emma or the divorce or anything else. I just prepare for the big day. I pack a bag. I make some phone calls. I clean up the house. I don't want to leave any trace behind. I don't want anyone to know what I'm up to. The house is quieter without her, but everything else is the same. The furniture, the pictures hanging on the walls, everything is the same except for her. I feel like she just disappeared, and I'm living in the same place, but now she's gone. I looked at my phone and saw a text message from Linda Thompson, Greg's wife. She wanted to meet for coffee. A short while later, we were sitting at our usual spot, the Morning Brew. The place was packed as usual, but everyone was talking in a low murmur. I didn't know, Linda says softly. He was always busy with the association. Greg was very discreet with his calendar, I say, pushing a folder across the table. But less so with these. She opens it and begins rifling through credit card statements and hotel receipts. My cards, she says. They used me for everything that they didn't want to be connected to them. Emma handled the finances. A barista dropped a mug behind the counter, startling Linda, and through the window of the cafe I could see Allison's husband David walking past. He looked different than usual, more haunted. Did you give Catherine the heads up? Linda asks, referring to Mark's wife, about the joint accounts. She's with her attorney now. All evidence has been properly disseminated. Linda closed the folder and pushed it away from her as if afraid it might attack her. Everyone is talking about it. Sarah Mitchell called me this morning, Emma's mom. She's beside herself. Just wait till she wakes up after Saturday, I say, taking a slow sip of coffee. The barbecue? Linda asks, looking at me with a hint of suspicion. What do you mean, Saturday? Before I could answer, Jennifer from the book club came over to our table, looking excited and trying to cover it up with concern. Linda, James, you will not believe what I just found out about Emma and the HOA money. I knew I only had to tell Jennifer, and the word would spread quickly. And the credit cards? Jennifer whispers in fake names? Lots of them, I say. The cops are very interested. Jennifer's hand went to her mouth. Police? Stealing someone's identity is a federal offense, Linda chimes in, her bewilderment turning to anger. Across state lines, no less. The door opened, and Emma stepped inside. She stopped when she saw us. All conversation ceased, and everyone was looking at us. James, she says, moving towards our table. I think your lawyer told you not to talk to me, I say, loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. She turned and left in shame. What about Allison? Jennifer says, texting furiously. The spa appointments? And more, I say, rising to my feet. You'll get the full scoop on Saturday, I'm sure. I stepped out into the daylight. The neighbors were looking out their windows at me now. A few people were standing outside on their lawns, watching me. Someone came out of their house with a phone, pointing it at me, recording me. My cell phone buzzed. It was from Sarah Chen. Just finished the video compilation. The pool house is, well, just wait till you see it. I walked home and saw a real estate agent measuring the front lawn of Greg's house. She was sticking a sign into the ground which said, for sale. Mark's car was gone, but Catherine's was still there. When I got home, I saw another package had been left for me on my doorstep by Marcus. I read through it and saw it was more information about Emma and all of her dealings. She had been very busy, it seemed. More messages from the neighbors came in on my phone. Is it true? About the book club money? Did you know about Greg? I heard the FBI is looking into... I don't. I leave it mostly up to their imaginations. The truth is bad enough as it is. Out the window, I see Emma driving past my house, her car packed with luggage. The guest room is empty now. She left in a hurry. Later that day, as the sun was setting, I got a call from Sarah Chen. All set to go, she says, not wasting any time. The projectors are set up in Greg's garage. His wife told us the combination. Great, I answer. This Saturday's going to be interesting. It might be a lot for people to take in. I thought of Emma's lies and deception, of Greg's advice when he was sleeping with my wife, of Mark's handshakes and smiles at the neighbor parties. Well, maybe they should have thought of that before they started the concert, I say, hanging up. The evening arrives, and the loneliness doesn't feel as sad anymore. The people passing by my house are on their phones now, talking to each other about the things they have just learned. I can't wait to see their faces on Saturday, when I unveil the full truth. This is going to be so much fun. It went fast. It took me a few days to prepare for my big reveal on Saturday, but after that, things moved rapidly. By Monday, the police were involved, and by Tuesday, the rumors and texts had been replaced with witness accounts and depositions, and that brings us here. The hearing was scheduled for the day after. You ready? Fuck yes. In the courtroom, Emma is sitting down next to her lawyer. I recognize her because it's the third one she's hired after being fired by the first two. She doesn't look behind her as I come in. All rise, a bailiff says. The Honorable Judge Eleanor Martinez presiding. Sit down, she says. We're here to finalize the divorce of James Mitchell and Emma Mitchell, case number 2023, DR 4729. The trial begins in a very anticlimactic manner. Marcus presents the final numbers, the evidence of fraud, identity theft, and misappropriation of corporate funds. Emma's lawyer stands up, looking beaten. Your Honor, my client admits to some infidelities, yes, but believes that the asset split is retaliatory in nature. Indiscretions? I have records of federal crimes in front of me, Judge Martinez said. We're ready to pay you back, he starts to say. With whose credit cards? Marcus cuts him off, getting a glare from the judge but making his point. The sunlight streaming in through the tall windows cast shadows on the barricade, making it look like Emma was behind bars. She was looking directly at the judge, sitting up straight, like she was trying to impress him one last time. But it was too late for that. The judge was flipping through the pages of our case file. Mrs. Mitchell, you are aware that by signing this, you forfeit any further claims to these possessions? Yes, Your Honor, Emma says softly. And you understand the restitution obligations to the injured parties? Yes, Your Honor. The judge's pen made a scribbling sound as he wrote something down. Mr. Mitchell, do you agree to the deal as it stands? I do, Judge. The judge almost smiled at the irony of that statement in this setting. Okay, then I now pronounce you divorced. The judge pounded his gavel, and just like that it was over. All those years of deceit and heartbreak boiled down to this. Marcus collected our papers. "Congratulations," he says. "The accounts will be in your name by close of business today." She stood up, adjusting her skirt. Her lawyer left the room without waiting for her. She took a step toward me, but Marcus moved a little closer. "You should only be speaking to me through your lawyer," she tells him. "James, she starts to say. "Good luck, Emma," I say, walking away. "I think the feds want to question you next." The hallway feels more brightly lit than before on my way out. I get a text from Sarah Chen asking if I'm ready for Saturday. "All done," I say. "You all set for the last scene?" "Yeah, we've got everything we need, and we got the perfect shot from Greg's wife next door." I saw her getting into a cab outside the courthouse. A moment later, I got a text from Linda Thompson. "Just talked to my lawyer. Your charges for identity theft are being filed today. See you Saturday." "Wouldn't miss it," I reply, imagining the video montage I have prepared for the neighborhood to see. It was bright and sunny outside now. I took off my tie and my jacket as I left the courthouse. Marcus followed me to my car. "Anything else you need before Saturday?" "Just a good view," I reply, opening the door. "And some popcorn." He smiled, although I could hear in his voice he wasn't joking. It's going to impact the entire community. You realize that, right? I think of pristine lawns concealing decay, of friendly greetings disguising predatory intentions, of trust turned into a weapon. Everything already has, I say. Saturday is just a formality. I drove home with the divorce papers on the seat next to me, thinking about how everything was about to change. This Sunday would be the neighborhood BBQ. I would have to be ready by then. I stayed up all night, going through everything one last time, preparing for the day ahead. The divorce had been finalized that day, and after my testimony, it had been clear who the guilty party was. It hadn't been difficult to prove, but that was only the beginning. The morning after the divorce hearing, I found myself standing outside in the early morning twilight, watching the sprinklers go off on Greg's lawn. Despite the fact that he hadn't been home in days, the automatic timer was still set to water the grass early every morning. Sarah Chen appeared at my side, as if out of nowhere. "We finished checking the equipment last night," she said. "Any problems?" I ask, watching a jogger who lingers a little longer than usual as she goes by. "Just Greg's wife asking if she could submit some of her own footage. Had to talk her out of that one." It was morning. I saw David Anderson down the street, packing more evidence into his car. "James?" I turned to see Linda Thompson walking up to me with a couple cups of coffee from the morning brew. "Here, I figured you'd want one," she says, passing one over. "Big day today." "Thanks, Linda. How are the accounts?" "Frozen." The bank's fraud department was actually quite responsive. Sarah looked at her phone. "The first guests should be arriving around 4. I'd like to wait until the sun is a bit lower, so the projection is more visible." "What about Emma?" Linda asks, taking a cautious sip of her coffee. "She was released on bail last night. She's still facing federal charges, but for now, she's out." People start to wake up, and now that they know what's going on, it's not quite business as usual. "Are we bad people?" Linda says, "for wanting to show everybody?" I look at Greg's sprinklers, thinking about all the things they must have seen. "They picked their path," Sarah says on my behalf. "We're just the stage." It was a text from Allison's husband. Catherine found a few more receipts. Should we include them in today's presentation? "No," I type back. "The current version tells enough story." The sun rises and more people come outside, looking like they've been waiting for this moment for a long time. "Thanks for doing what you did," Linda says, "for getting the truth out there." "Thank you," I respond, thinking back to seeing Emma's face in court the day before, "for letting us do it." Her phone buzzed again. "First news van just arrived. Looks like someone called the press." "They sure did," I reply. "This town is terrible at keeping secrets." The day goes on and people begin to set up barbecues and coolers with beer for the evening. Around 4 or 5 o'clock, the party finally kicks off. Most of us are waiting at the garage, but a few unsuspecting people are still hanging around by the barbecue. 10 minutes, Sarah whispers as she walks by, slipping the remote into my hand. "I'll let you know when." The sun was setting, casting a perfect image of the garage door onto Greg's white garage door. I could hear people around me talking quietly, trying to guess what was coming next. "James." Emma spoke up from the back of the crowd, looking a little less intimidating without her police uniform. "You shouldn't be here," I say, but don't stop her. "I wanted to know." Sarah interjected, stepping between us and separating us. Ma'am, I think you're violating your bail conditions. I know what I did, Emma cuts in, loudly enough for everyone to hear. To all of you, The sun was beginning to set, and I saw Sarah get a text message on her phone. Now, it said, and she looked at me. I nodded and pressed the button in my pocket. A moment later, the first picture appeared on Greg's garage door, showing everyone what his wife had been doing in the pool house with Mark. The crowd gasped, and people started filming with their phones. More pictures appeared, showing Greg's secret meetings with Emma and Allison's various lies. Pictures of all the lies and deceit that had been going on in the neighborhood for years. Emma stood there, frozen in place. She didn't even try to run away. There was nowhere to run to. Finally, a short movie appeared on the garage door, showing security footage from several different hotels. The movie ended, and there was a brief moment of silence before Linda stepped forward and spoke. That concludes this year's Neighborhood Association meeting. The FBI will take over from here. Several people emerged from the crowd, showing their badges. They came up to Emma and arrested her. She didn't resist. She just looked at me one last time, and then they took her away. The rest of the people left one by one. Sarah packed up her stuff and left too. I stayed outside for a while, watching the sun set. The sprinklers turned on and watered the grass, washing away the footprints. I breathed in the fresh air and felt a sense of relief.
All right, everyone's presentations are done, Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1, if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, "I'm moving to the sales department soon." If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. "Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it." On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. "It's still working hours." Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. "Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived." I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. "They look good." "What are you talking about?" "These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. "Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us." "The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one?" As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.